Grandpa, I've been thinking about you lately, wondering if you'd found your peace of mind.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know it's a couple of minutes early, so please welcome to the stage a very good friend of mine and one of the pillar sponsors of this event since we started seeking out sponsors. Her name is Ginger Williams. You probably remember her from My Honey's Kitchen. That is now turned into Sweet Boutique. They have sponsored us again. There's a lovely food and goodies package down below that we're giving away tonight. She's all the way from Gallatin, Missouri. She's on her way to Montana for a family trip and decided to stop here for 45 minutes. And along the way, she lost her voice. So please strain to listen, get closer if you need to, and welcome to the stage my good friend, Ginger Williams.
Thank you. So, one of my favorite things about being part of this group is that I get to meet some amazing people. And as we were at My Honey's Kitchen, we made some great friends. Then as we made a switch, we still do freeze-dried food, but not in the extent that we were doing it. But one of the things I tell people, I love food. My husband thinks I was starved as a child because I like food storage. So I grew up in a home that we canned peaches and we canned meat, we canned things, we canned. As I grew up, I continued to can. I discovered dehydrating foods. I discovered that it's big, bulky, and heavy. And so then I looked for other alternatives and discovered freeze-drying. Freeze-drying means that anything that stands still and fits in the machine can come out and be put in a Mylar bag and kept for 25 years. Makes me feel very comfortable. So I started doing that. But along my path, I discovered fermentation. I discovered a variety of different other ways and fun ways to create things that I really, really enjoy eating and sharing. But most of all, I enjoy sharing knowledge. So just a question, why do we preserve food? Anybody?
It's seasonal.
Seasonal, okay.
And for the future, what they had a 7-year, we have 7-year drought.
Okay.
Supply chain.
All right, very good. Now's a really good time to think about that with the tariffs and all the good things that are coming. Supply chain might become an issue. So we want to preserve our harvest for those kind of reasons. I grew up in a church that I wasn't super active in, but for some reason the one thing that has always stuck, food storage. When I got married, there were days, months, years, we lived on our food storage because financially, that's what we had. So you open up the cupboard and you just start bringing things out. We raised 6 kids. So when we had, as they all started growing out, I kept canning the same amount of food. So our food storage continued to grow. One year, my daughter and I, we were putting in the 800th bottle of canning, and Salt Lake City had an earthquake. And somebody said, "What would you do if you had an earthquake?" I said, "I'd just shut the door and walk away, because that would be a mess." So we also preserve our food because we want to extend its shelf life. There's a lot of good foods that are very short in shelf life. Meat, for instance, is good in your freezer unless the electricity goes out. Then that's a lot of meat you have to throw away. Or you find ways to preserve it. So freeze drying is a great way to do meat. You can smoke it. You can jerk it. I also brought samples for everybody to try some things too. And then I discovered something called pemmican. Does anybody know about pemmican? Okay, well, pemmican's been kind of fun. because everybody tells me it tastes awful. It doesn't. Um, One of the other things I discovered is it's not like eating a candy bar. You have to just chew it. So if you're on the trail, if you're in an emergency situation, if you are trying to find ways to store and prolong things, pemmican's a great way to do it. The Indians did it, the pioneers did it, travelers have done it for centuries. So it's a great way. So if you've never tried pemmican and want to try it, I got some up here for you to try. This is for me to stay on task more than for you guys to read, because I'm really good at not staying on task. So food storage has been around since the beginning of time. It's been kind of interesting to watch how things have progressed over time. So some of the ones that we know, we have canning, dehydration, freeze drying, freezer, then we have smoking foods, we have salt and sugar curing, fermentation, pickling, ash, clay, sawdust, sand, and of course a root cellar. So those are good ways for preserving food. So traditionally, we know canning was developed in the early 1800s, so compared to some of the other ways of doing it, it hasn't been around that long. So can anybody tell me some of the things that make canning difficult? What would make it hard for canning?
If you weren't able to, like, take your gauge to the extension service and get it, checked to make sure it's working right.
Okay.
If you didn't have a fire that could stay at a consistent temperature for a long enough time, or if you didn't have enough jars, or, well, the lids are not supposed to reuse, but even if you did reuse them, how many times?
And the funny thing is, it was about 10 years ago, I had made an observation that the wax on the lids seemed thinner than when I was a kid. So then for the first time in my life, I turned over the box and it said, good for 12 months. How many of you cleaned out Grandma's closet and her pantry and found things from the 50s, 60s, 70s, but they were still eating them? Well, if you looked at the wax on those, it was really thick. Sorry. Somewhere along the line, they started thinning that out, which made it less time. So now you just got to be careful, and reusing it is not likely because of that. So you have to be really careful now. So just pay attention to the rings that you do use. They do have a variety of other options out there now. A Tetler, I think, is the one that's still like a wax ring that you actually put on the jar. So there are options still to prolong your canning. It's also heavy and bulky, yes.
One thing is, if you're trying to do it by yourself, it's a lot of work. You get a group together, like my sister, family come together, it's up to 500 cans of tomatoes, and it's not work, it's a joy.
It's fun. It's a good time to have family memories. My husband talks about so his mom came from a family of 8, and they all had at least 6 kids. So when they harvested corn, it would be the whole yard full of corn. The kids are out shucking and hucking and going to town. So absolutely, it made it great. I know that when my mom and I did peaches, I hated it because it was my mom and I. But when the neighbors came over, it made it a whole different experience. So some people will tell you it is not financially beneficial to can food because of the time that it takes. But if you're building family memories, that changes it's no longer time, it's family time. So then that changes that time financially. You can buy a 59-cent can of corn at Walmart. But the thing is, if you look on the back of that can anymore, they've started adding things to corn. So now it's not just corn. So when you can it, you know what you're putting in it, and that's huge. So for me, that was one of the biggest things. And when you can or pressure cook, you can do a variety of things. Anything from your meat. The first time I ever had canned venison, it was like changes the whole thing. So canned meat, which requires pressure cooking, which is a different technique, but water bathing, pressure cooking. And usually that's for your low acid foods and your high acid foods. You can do your soups. There will be people who tell you that you cannot do gravies, purees, and that kind of thing. So sorry. One of my favorite groups to discover on the internet was the Rebel Canners. They are a joy because they can everything. They can milk. That's a big no-no. If you talk to the extension office, they can hamburger patties. They literally can everything. Yes.
I had a cousin, they've got 5 freezers. One of them had an air leak, froze solid. Spent about 4 days trying to get it thawed out. Then they had 50 pounds of meat they cooked with spices, and then they freeze dry. And as you'll tell us, the meat reconstitutes just like it was, or it's great.
Just by the handfuls.
Oh,
Yep. Yep.
We had 5 smoke cookers going, and the freeze dried.
Just going to town. Yep. The other thing you can do is dry canning. So that's like in your oven. And that's like for your dry goods, your flour, your sugar, your pastas, those kind of things. Also, when I lived in Utah, we had a neighbor, and they are the creators of the can sealer for like your number 10 can. So I could go over and borrow one of their cans. And I remember one year we had our whole front yard full of number 10 cans. And we canned potatoes and we canned sugar and flour. And we carried that stuff around for years until I moved from Montana. And we were down to 2 kids still at home. And my boys said, "We are not moving it another time, Mom." So I called somebody and they came and got it. But dry canning is a great way to also preserve your things, to keep bugs out. Bugs are a big problem for your dry products. So you have to be really careful to make sure that you are not using high moisture foods. Has anybody ever dry canned in the oven before? So to go in the oven, you bring it to your lowest temperature, and you can put in, I do herbs mostly in the dry canner, and you can do candy. So you put candy or herbs or whatever in your quart jars. Put your lid on it, put it in the oven, bring it up to temperature, and then you turn it off. And when you come out, you crank the lid on, and it seals. So again, watch for that seal ring on your ring. But then it gives it a good shelf life for your dry goods. So dehydration is your next most common. Who dehydrates food here? Okay. Dehydrating is great for a lot of things. It makes your jerky. You got your vegetables, your fruit. And it's been around for a really long time. I was kind of interested to discover that, like the Romans, the Egyptians, so it's been around probably since they were doing mummies, because that's another good way of doing that. We did an experiment one time with a chicken. And we just put in a bucket of salt to see what would happen. And it mummified and it dried, but it still was able to tear the meat off and so forth. So that's a different way of dehydrating. We'll get to that one. The nice thing about dehydrated food, it's lightweight, so it's easy to backpack with, pick up and leave in a hurry with. I mean, we're with a bunch of prepared people. Many of you probably don't have canned food sitting in your grab pack because it's heavy. So you're going to be putting in your dehydrated food, your freeze-dried food, your pemmican once you learn how to make it. So one of the things about dehydrated foods that can be a con is that it needs to be reconstituted. Not all dehydrated food has to be reconstituted. And you can literally do, again, your fruits, vegetables, meat, and herbs, and your shelf life for that is up to 10 years. And the only reason why I would say it doesn't go much beyond that is because then you start to lose nutritional value in your products that you dehydrate. So then the newest guy on the market of commonly used is freeze drying, but it's not as new as y'all would think. Deep freeze drying has been around since the 1300s, when the Incas used to take their harvest up to the top of the mountains where the temperatures would freeze dry their food for them and keep it. So it's definitely not what we do today, but that's the first time that freeze drying is in the history books, is in about the 1300s. And I thought that was kind of cool. And freeze drying has kind of had a kind of an interesting travel. In World War II, it kind of pops up here and there in the 1800s, but in World War II, they discovered they could freeze dry penicillin, and they could send the penicillin virus to the soldiers, and that way, when they got there, they could reconstitute it and use it as medication. But before then, if they tried to ship it, it would be gone by the time it got there. So World War II, it became a prevalent way to store foods, to store virus. Then we know about the astronauts in the 60s. Got the Tang orange drink, you got ice cream. So that was with Nestle, actually was one of the first commercial freeze-drying companies. And then we move up to the 2000s where Harvest Right kind of takes the scene. But the cool thing is with with freeze-drying, like dehydrating, it maintains almost 97% of its nutritional value, where with canning food, you would lose almost 50% of your nutritional value. So it's a huge value there. It also very lightweight. One of the things I quickly discovered when we freeze-dried food is I could take 5 trees worth of apples, freeze-dry them. They all fit in one tote, and I could carry the whole harvest myself. So makes it really, really good for having to get in the car and go fast. But it's also super versatile. When I first started freeze drying, it never dawned on me that people would do candy in there. Candy is kind of what made Harvest Right and freeze drying known. It's because everybody and their brother now does candy. We do a little bit at our store, but my focus has always been mostly food. Again, I love food. So I don't want anything to go to waste. My first machine was purchased because I was tired of throwing away leftovers. So I could take leftovers and put them in the freeze dryer and not have to feel bad about throwing them away. But then when I discovered how easy it was to do apples in it, and then it became super easy. What you do not want to do is do garlic and plums in the same machine, though. It makes for some really nasty tasting plums. But my family will tell you I wasn't about to throw away the plums. So I discovered that you could make things to go in things with plum sauce. So we got creative. So some of it wasn't very good. One of the cool things about freeze drying, though, is you can literally do anything. You can do eggs, you can do milk, you can do cheese, you can do meat, fruits, vegetables, you can do meals, you can do ingredients, you can do herbs. One of the things, sorry guys, one of the things I love about it is its versatility. There are ways, I actually have somebody who Harvest Right will tell you can't do honey in it. And part of me says, why would you? because honey lasts forever by itself. But if you coated something in honey and cooked it down to a candy stage, then you can freeze dry that honey, and it kind of blows up and is kind of cool looking, makes it lightweight and crunchy, so it's a little bit different texture for you. I brought, you guys can try some of the things we've tried, so afterwards. So smoking is another way. Who smokes meat here? Yeah. Smoking has been one of the things that my husband and I have kind of discovered along the way. I knew about it. I've heard about it. I've eaten the jerky that people have smoked. I've had smoked food before, but as a food preservation, I just kind of learned about it probably the last 5 years. But American Indians, the Vikings, they knew about it a long time ago. When I read the Good Louis L'Amour book, they always talked about the Indians having their smoking their fish and whatnot. It didn't dawn on me what it really tasted like and its value. But smoking also retains the nutrients. I mean, when you're doing your food storage, nutritional value is also very, very big because you want to make sure that your family has. If you are in a situation where you're having to survive on your food storage, stress increases your needs for your nutritional value. So it's going to be super important that you have good nutrition available. I always tell people, make sure that your food storage isn't just good things. Make sure you have fun things too, because you're going to get really bored eating the same things over and over and over. But when you harvest your garden, you can do all sorts of fun things. I mean, when you harvest corn, mix it with some green beans, not green beans, but mix it with some peppers and some jalapenos and give it a little bit of sugar and whatnot, make a relish out of it. And then you can freeze dry that, you can can that, and now you've got a sweet side dish that'll give you something different. So be creative with what you can harvest. When I think of harvesting, I think of everything on your farm. If you don't have a farm and you live in town, anything that you can grow. I've discovered that there's a lot of flowers that you can grow that are also edible. So your garden isn't just your vegetables, isn't just the orchard in the backyard. It happens to be the vegetables, the fruit. Oh my gosh, oh sorry guys. It also can be the flowers that you enjoy looking at outside. From your roses to your lilacs to your lavender to your all those other things. They all have medicinal purposes. So they're not just pretty to look at, they also have a purpose. So one of the cons for smoking, its lifespan isn't as long as other forms of food preservation. And it does sometimes, but it combines well with other ways. So if you smoke your meat, then you can can it, and now you've given it longevity. If you smoke some things, or if you dehydrate some things, or if you do one source, and then you take it to another way, you can take it 1 year life and give it a 10-year life. Curing with salt and sugar. Salt is great. So this is my coleslaw. I usually have a great big crock of it, but I didn't want to do that. So cabbage, when you grow cabbage, I think I was probably in my late 40s before I realized that cabbage is something you can make and not have to go buy. For some reason, we get it in our heads. I don't know if you've ever met somebody who thinks that milk comes from the grocery store, not from a cow. So I was one of those people who thought sauerkraut came from the grocery store. So when I discovered I could make it, it tastes so much better when you make it. It was amazing and so easy. You literally cut up your cabbage, salt, squish it, let it sit for 30 minutes, put it in a crock or a jar, put weight on it to hold it down. And in 6 weeks, you've got some of the best sauerkraut in the world. And nothing beats fresh sauerkraut. We'll get to that one in a minute. We're going to talk about that one too. Anyway, so when you preserve with salt. The other thing you can preserve in salt is your meat, and you can layer it in salt, and the salt will help repel the moisture out of your meat. It also requires no refrigeration at that point. And it can last anywhere from months up to a couple years. But it does create a high sodium. It does require proper technique. So if something is going to be pulling moisture out of something, that moisture has to go someplace. So if you're doing meat, as we discovered with the chicken, you have to change the salt. Otherwise, it's going to be sitting in that yuck stuff and it's going to get gross. And now you're ruining the meat. So you layer in salt and then you change the salt out every once in a while to get that moisture away from it. Your flavor and your texture will definitely change. But as in many things, as in like canning, your texture's not there anymore from a fresh peach to a canned peach. Anytime we do certain things, we're going to change the textures. It is good for, our bacon is usually a ham or sugar cured. Our hams or bacon, oh my gosh, are salt or sugar cured. Citrus fruits are great for sugar curing. If you take the peels and you put them, layer them in sugar, you create a great candy. But you also create a medicinal need too. So when people are talking like me, you can chew on a piece of that sugar rind and it'll help soothe your throat. Root vegetables are also really good in salt curing, and olives are also salt cured. Fermentation. There's a couple different kinds of fermentation. You have your lacto-fermentation, which is your kefir, your yogurt, sour cream, and cottage cheeses. So if you have a farm and you are growing food and you have a place to go, it goes out to your goats or to your cows, which then gives you all your cream products. So when I think about food production and harvest, I think about your cows and your goats and your chickens are all part of your harvest. So the other fermenting is like beer, kimchi, sauerkraut. I have personally never made kimchi. Has anybody ever heard made kimchi before? I've also never eaten it. So in my mind, kimchi comes from the grocery store. So I only bought it for me to show it to you. I still haven't tried it. I don't know what it tastes like. What does it taste like? You've made it? You've made it before? Have you made kimchi? Oh, okay. Okay. So one of the other things I've discovered that you can also ferment in honey. It makes for a very sticky way to ferment, so this is garlic that I fermented in honey. So one of the things that my honeybees create some amazing honey, and then if you grow your garlic, throw it in here. It does a couple things. One, you have a great medicine, great for sore throats, great for coughs, great for a lot of different things. Who's worried about ticks out here? One of these garlic cloves will probably take care of you, probably for the weekend, but nobody else is going to want to be around you either. So, anyway, garlic is a great deterrent for ticks. And anyway, so you guys can try this afterwards. I also discovered that the garlic infused fermented honey is great on chicken, great on other pork products. So anyway, so it creates a great medicine and a great way to cook. When you're fermenting, it does require monitoring, so it's a little bit time intense. But this is one of those things that if you do this from here, then I can put a lid on it, and now I can water bath it, and now it's going to give it a 10-year shelf life. So with this, eggs, we love pickled eggs at our house. So pickled eggs is a great way to give pickles another year of shelf life. These are not canned, so you can try these if you want. I have taken these and then canned them. I'm so sorry. And then they lasted up to a year. I promise we're almost done. Who makes sourdough bread? Sourdough is another form of fermentation. Oh, thank you. Sourdough is one of those things that I grew up with. I didn't understand, so I'm just discovering it. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm working on it. Pickling. Now, when I first heard of pickling, I thought everybody makes pickles. But to just throw this in and put it on the counter for 4 or 5 days, now I got pickles. It's much easier. I don't have to peel. I don't have to do any of that fun stuff. I haven't tried these ones yet. I made these for here so we can try them. Pickling definitely adds flavor. And you can do eggs, you can do cucumbers. I thought it was interesting that you can also do meat. I've not ever pickled meat, but I guess anchovies would be pickling. Pig's feet. I don't know other kinds of meat that you pickle, but it's not suitable for every kind of food out there. So you have to kind of pick and choose and maybe do research. I am also really known for experimenting. So experiment and have fun, because I think food storage should be fun anyway. And depending on what kind of garden you grow, my family will tell you that when I plant a garden, that apparently when you have a family of 8, it does not require 20 tomato plants and 20 jalapeno plants. A lot less than that is good. So that gives me lots of area to experiment, because now I got to find all the ways to make that last, because I'm not throwing it out. When you pickle foods too, like you can do onions, you can do like your root vegetables are really good for that. Okra was my grandfather's vegetable of choice, and I discovered that you could pickle it. And so if he was still around today, I would pickle his harvest for him and be happy to give it to him. But he usually lived in an area he could grow it all year round, so he was good. Oil preservation is new to me, but it was kind of interesting to discover that it also has been around forever. And it's fairly versatile. And the reason why it works is because it coats the vegetable in the oil, and so then it keeps it away from moisture and bacteria from growing. So it's not like a long-lasting, unless, again, you take it and you process it to give it a longer life. But you can do like your olives. Not that many of us grow olives around here, but you can do eggplant and zucchini. I've not ever done that. My biggest thing is I do herbs, and you can dry herbs, but when you dry herbs, sometimes it loses flavor. If you immerse it in olive oil, it does 2 folds. 1, it flavors your olive oil. 2, it makes the herb last longer, and you can then take it and cook with it and do other things with it. So now you've given it a longevity and kept the flavor. Cheese also I thought was interesting. I have seen it, never tried it. I have seen cheese in oil. Has anybody ever done oil? Have you? And what's that like?
You just put mozzarella balls in oil.
That's just tea.
And it's
Thank you.
peppermint and mullein. And it's as long as the tea is, or as the oil is, and the cheese is cured enough so it doesn't bring the oil in.
Okay.
It's a great way to keep it. So like mozzarella balls in oil. And then
Okay.
you just like the oil, you can put herbs in it, it absorbs into the cheese, so you can get like garlic, rosemary.
Awesome.
Delicious, yeah.
And I say, and mozzarella is one of the easiest cheeses to make. So if you're new to the cheese making world, that's where you start. I've attempted it once, yes.
when I was about 8 tall, my mom and dad were out hunting, and a guy from out east had shot a bear. He wanted the hide, or bear rug, or whatever, and he wanted the bear fat for his boots and stuff. So we processed the deer, mom did, and made sausages, put them inside the fat, which is
That's awesome.
that's that's just part of what you just had with oil.
That's true.
Very, very thankful for it.
Bear fat on your boots does not smell good either. Oh, it works really good. I worked on a dude ranch when I was in high school, and before we'd head out on the next trek, we're all greasing up our boots. So,
My grandpa, they caught the stove in this old schoolhouse, and some of the city kids, like people, had some kind of grill cream or something. He thought he would do that. He got it on the creek and put that pot on his stove.
so a lot of times what I've seen mushrooms, tomatoes, garlic, pepper, and then and the oils that you're going to use would be your olive oil, your grapeseed oil, avocado oils. This one was kind of interesting. Ash, clay, sawdust, and sand are not commonly used ways of preserving food today, but they are still usable today. These are great for people who live off-grid. Does anybody live off-grid here? Off-grid? Like no electricity? Sand? You can use any of these off-grid. We lived off-grid for a while. I didn't use these then, but because I didn't know about them. But I do know a lot of people work really hard at trying to get off-grid, especially as we prepare for whatever might come our way. So I kind of broke it down. So ash was a way that a lot of the Indians used to preserve their foods. You have to make sure that it's obviously cooled and that it's pure wood and it's not chemical wood. So like you're not going to use your 2x4s or anything that's been treated in any kind of way. And then once you have it, you're just layering your foods in barrels or in crates or whatnot. It also keeps away insects. Because if you're going to keep your foods whole, and like in your root cellars and whatnot, one of the things you run into is critters wanting to get into it. And so ash is a good way to keep critters out. It is kind of messy though. If you want to go retrieve food, it's going to be kind of messy, but still doable. And I know that if any of you heat your house with wood, did any of you cut the wood? So that's probably pretty pure wood. So that would be a good wood. So it doesn't cost very much either then. So you have a good way to do that. Clay is a good way you make the clay, and then you like pack it around things, and then you let it dry. The downside to that is, I don't know, if you're very clumsy, I'm super clumsy. So anything that's going to be in clay, most likely I'm going to drop, and then it's useless. But you have to keep it cooled in a cool, dry space. So that'd be like your root cellars, your basements. And the biggest problem that we have, I don't know, does Kansas have a moisture problem? Humidity issue in Kansas? So. Missouri has a serious humidity issue. So some of these ways would never work in Missouri. But the drier your areas are, the better some of these are. The nice thing is clay is going to keep any natural light out. So it's going to help keep moisture away. It's going to help insulate it. The cool thing is once you break that clay off of that food, it's reusable, as with your ash. Your sand is good for your root vegetables in dry, cool environments. And that would be like your carrots, your beets, your parsnips. So I don't know, again, if you grow a garden so big but you can't keep up with the canning. You can't keep up with the freezing. You can't keep up with it all the other ways. This is a good way to maybe even hold on to it until you get to it. I always keep squash, thinking that I'm going to get to it someday. This is a good way to keep squash. And that ash and the next one is another good way to keep your squash so that it doesn't get soft and squishy before you get to it. And obviously, again, you're going to want to keep things dry and keep it in a crate or a barrel. So sorry.
I wanted to say, when we lived in Alaska, we lived way off grid, and that was great. We just used that a lot. But they found that with plastic buckets, a lot of them began to use those. And you go, well, keep the bugs off, keep the air out, and everything, and they were getting botulism. And it was really, really bad thing. So I just wanted to mention that if people try that, what they would do traditionally, they would hold and line up with dry grass, just a good layer, bigger hole than you need, and dry grass, and then put the leaves or the vegetables or whatever they're trying to preserve into that. But don't put it in 5-gallon buckets where it's going to be airtight, because that.
Well, the problem, the problem with the plastic bucket, if you're going to put anything that normally has moisture in it, is that what happens if you didn't get that last little bit of moisture out of it? And then you're going to end up with a big mess. And botulism on any of these is an issue if you're not doing them correctly. I've not had the problem with botulism, but I do know that that's why the Extension Office is very particular about their canning, is because they don't want to be caught with botulism. That's why the rebel canners sometimes get a bad rap. It's because they're willing to push the limit. You would hope that for the most part that if you are a canner, before you eat any of it, you're going to smell it. If you're doing anything with eggs, you're going to crack them in a separate bowl before you put them in the food that you're cooking. So I guess with food preservation of any kind, it's common sense. If it smells bad, if it's dented, if it is discolored, if it's any of those things, you probably shouldn't be eating it. But yes, thank you very much. Because I think that sometimes we forget about that. Because 5-gallon buckets are easy to get.
Right, exactly. They're convenient. And so when they were available, we started using them, and we started getting sick, and they didn't understand why.
Yeah.
You use a really traditional method with something that's modern, and that doesn't combine real well.
And those buckets probably would have been okay if they had holes in the bottom. So, so the thing about any of these other ways that we're talking about is they all require space. So a good place for that is like a root cellar, a basement in a cool, dry area. My mother-in-law has a food storage room that's all surrounded by concrete. And that's specifically what it's for. So it would be a good place for that. It's like a root cellar within her house. Sawdust, again, any of you who go out and get your own wood, you're going to be able to get clean sawdust. When you cut that wood for your fireplace, you're going to have access to good sawdust. It's inexpensive because, again, if you're getting the firewood, you're going to already be getting it. You got to cut it. You got to split it. So sawdust helps prevent bruising, and it extends freshness. But it has to be untreated again. It can attract, if not monitored, it can attract other critters. And it's not good in humid climates, so no for Missouri. So root cellars have been around for a really long time. Does anybody have a root cellar? Do you use it all the time? I used to love it when I go to the old houses. And there'd be that little hill in the background, that door. And I'd always think, what the heck's in there? So then we actually rented a house in Montana. And it had one of those doors. But by then, I'd seen enough scary movies. I didn't want to open that door because it was kind of, I don't know what's down there. Eventually I did, and it wasn't as scary as I thought it was, but that was their root cellar. And Grandma's canning from 3 or 4 tenants before was still down there. But there was so many other fun things. Some of them were not good anymore. But it was kind of interesting the way that they had actually done some of these very ways. They had crates with sawdust. They had some crates with, I'm sure it was clay, that had over time diminished. So it was kind of interesting. The cool thing about a root cellar, it doesn't require electricity. And it doesn't require refrigeration.
We could keep our carrots year round. We had a hole that we dug out, a square hole, and we would put our carrots in a layer of sawdust. Carrots, to make sure the carrots weren't touching.
Right.
Another layer. So we had a pretty good size, but you can see carrots and everything.
And your potatoes, your apples. Yeah. I say, because then it's, the nice thing is too, is if you're a food preserver of any kind, saves you trips to the grocery store, which tends to save us money. One of the best things that Walmart ever did was make a phone call and get my groceries out to me, because it meant I didn't have to go up and down the aisles getting things I didn't need. But if you're able to do this, you don't have to do that either. So it's good for, and when I was growing up and reading stories, they always talked about the apple, that barrel of apples that had one bad apple. Have you ever had a barrel with one bad apple in it? What does it do? Ruins all of them, or at least the ones around it, until you find it. Kind of tends to be the same thing with potatoes or onions or any other of those kind of vegetables. So bad apple doesn't mean just the kids, it means the food too. So eggs is not part of your garden. On the other hand, if you're feeding your chickens any of your scraps from your garden, by extension, your chickens are part of your garden. So when we first started getting lots of eggs, I discovered don't wash them, leave them on the counter. They last a long time. The other thing you do is I started hearing about what do they call it? Water glassing. I thought it sounded like a really, really weird voodoo kind of way to keep eggs. But we tried it, and they'll last up to a year. So when your chickens are laying like crazy and you're giving them away, instead of giving them all away, start storing some of them so when the chickens aren't laying so well, you still have eggs to use. But this is where it becomes super important to make sure that you're cracking them in one bowl before you add them to what you're cooking. So they can last, again, up to a year in water glassing. Water glassing's done, again, you don't wash them. You get the poop off of them, but you don't wash them. And you put them in a lime water. And that lime water kind of soaks in around to the pores of the egg, and which helps. So when you get them out of that lime water, you want to make sure you wash them, obviously. And just to make sure that they're ready to go. But by preserving your harvest, it empowers us. It empowers us to know that we have food on the shelf for a hard time. We have shelf for an emergency. We have food because the neighbor stopped in and it was not 2, it was 10. That's happened a few times in our house. In fact, I think we just moved to Missouri and we had a big party going on outside. Party meaning my immediate family. And we had a van of 10 people stop in. We had plenty. I mean, that was not a problem. So it gives you the confidence in knowing that you can take care of your family. You take care of yourself. And if in the tornado running or in the hurricane or in the whatever might be coming your way, you can grab something, throw it in the back of your car, and you can feed your family in an emergency situation. So that's one of the things about your food storage that's super important. And it's even better is if you have grown it. Now, can you buy things from the store or from the farmer's market that you didn't grow and go ahead and still preserve it? Absolutely. We have the Amish just down the road from us, and they have auctions of their vegetables. And by the end of the day, you can buy crates and crates of vegetables and fruit from the Amish. I didn't grow it. And right now, to be honest, I don't have time for a garden. My husband gets mad at me because I keep making him rototill it up for me. Sometimes I throw seeds out there, but it doesn't never happen. So the Amish are my life saving right now. So you can go to a farmer's market and you can still preserve that food too, because if they've got a good price, you should take advantage of it. And maybe somebody's growing something that you don't normally grow. Maybe somebody grows something better. Sometimes you can like co-op with your neighbors. So one neighbor can do corn really well. One neighbor can do tomatoes because they grow way too many of them. There's a lot of different ways you can make sure that you have the produce, the harvest for your family. I'll bet you a lot of you hunt. Hunt. Do you guys go hunting? Yeah. Fishing? Yeah. No, go. I say, so the cool thing is you don't just have to put the meat in your freezer. You don't just have to put it in this jerky. You can freeze dry it. You can can it. There's other ways to do it so that it's versatile and usable, giveable. Because sometimes you got that neighbor. Have you ever had that neighbor who says, I don't need to do it? If there's an emergency, I know whose house to come to. Depending on what kind of emergency, exactly. Now, if they have an emergency, maybe, right? But it's like the grasshopper and the ants, right? If they have not prepared, it's hard to be kind.
The Mormons, you can go to their store, a little bit of stuff. They have a lot of stuff that's freeze-dried,
Yep.
full cans of,
You have the number 10 cans.
you can't buy that many from that, and it's already preserved.
Yep. And they do it by the cases too. So, yep. So, oh, look, we made it to the end. Anyway, so one of the things I hope what you got from this is that you're not stuck in one way of preserving your garden. There's a lot of different ways. So I hope you get excited about what you're growing, what you want to preserve. Be adventuresome. Take advantage of knowledge from your neighbor. You know, it's kind of like if you're learning a new skill, there's somebody who knows how to do it better, who has more experience, who's done it 100 times or a different way. There's not just one way to do anything. So be adventuresome in your food storage. Have fun doing it. Get your family together. Get your neighbors together. Find ways to enjoy doing it. Don't make it a grueling experience that your kids are going to grow up hating doing. Make it fun. Make it exciting to do. And embed in them the skills to do it for themselves. Because one of the things I have discovered is that this generation, one, they don't even know how to cook a meal, let alone how to preserve a meal. And so it's really, really sad to see that happening so much in today's world, because that's the neighbor that's going to come knocking on your door when they don't have anything and they know you do. So that might be the neighbor that you invite over to show them how to do it for themselves so that they can. But make sure that you make this an enjoyable experience. I have loved canning and preserving food. Food is life. Food is the number one thing in my book. Food is for family. Food is for neighbors. Food is for everything. When somebody says, hey, let's do this, the first thing I think of is, what am I going to bring? What are we going to eat? What are we going to do? The kitchen table is for the greatest conversations. It's great opportunities for camaraderie, for times to get together. So, does anybody have any questions? My throat's getting better. Thank you for the amazing tea, wherever she went. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, absolutely. I was looking forward to this like for months. I was not going to do this. So if anybody wants to come up and try, I have pemmican. I have the garlic and honey. I have eggs. I have the pickles. I have horseradish. I have freeze-dried fruits. I have freeze-dried vegetables. I have some jerked, oven jerked meat. So if anybody wants to come and try some, you're more than welcome to. If you try the pemmican and want to try a recipe, apparently it's the recipe. I put raspberries and blueberries and honey in mine with spices with freeze-dried meat. So anyway, you're welcome to come on up. Other than that, I think we're done early. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Even in the face of adversity, Ginger made it a point to be here with us today to share her wealth of wisdom, and we appreciate it. Year after year, you've been a staple in this event.
I love this group.
If any of you find yourselves in the Gallatin, Missouri area, feel free to check out that sweet boutique on the corner. You bet.
See if I can get this in.